Пианист, исследователь саунд-арта, докторант Лондонского университета искусств, такого его подразделения под названием CRISAP, Creative Research into Sound Art Practice. И, собственно, как раз сегодняшняя лекция методологически будет основана вот на этом самом принципе Creative Research, или как это еще называется, Practice-based Research в английском языке, то есть исследованиях, основанных на опыте собственной художественной практики, когда художник использует вот то, что он делает как художник, там, или в данном случае как музыкант, в качестве такого вот, что ли, поля для экспериментов, поля для исследований. В этом смысле она как-то методологически продолжает прошлую лекцию, которую я читал как искусствовед, но в моем случае это была интерпретация чьих-то чужих произведений. В случае Артура это лекция, основанная на собственном художественном опыте. И тематика ее тоже где-то пересекается в некотором смысле с методологией, потому что, напомню, что речь в нашем лекционном цикле идет о способах говорить о звуке. И в сегодняшней лекции в данном случае будет посвящена скорее, так скажем, тому, как художественные языки, основанные опять же на звуке, могут как-то переноситься в область исследований. То есть речь пойдет с одной стороны о глоссолалии, некоторые вот такой бессвязной речи, можно сказать, чистой фонетики, не связанной какими-то семантическими рамками. И с другой стороны, о свободной импровизации, которая, в свою очередь, как музыкальная практика, опять же, не связанная какими-то правилами, какими-то канонами и нормами. Вот. И, соответственно, о том, как вот эти языки связаны со звуком, как они могут помочь в понимании феномена звука. Артур Видал.
Вообще, мне кажется, что надо под камеру что-то переводить, но не вежливые фразы, а вот какие-то концептуальные.
Под камеру, мне кажется, просто проще субтитры потом будет ставить.
А кто будет делать?
Я.
Ага.
Если вопрос. Okay, let's begin.
Thank you very much for coming, for listening. Again, if you, I don't know, as you said, there is a possibility of translating, so just let me know.
Не надо.
Okay.
Fantastic.
No, but stop me at some point during the presentation. We are not so many, so I think we have time also. So don't hesitate to let me know. Yes, so as probably Vadim already told you, I'm a saxophonist player, I'm a musician, I'm also doing research, and I'm interested in improvisation. And at the moment I'm trying to look at my practice in improvised music from different perspectives that are maybe unfamiliar to the scene of improvisation. So today I will start this from some thoughts by an improviser that some of you might know. He's a guitar player called Derek Bailey. He's considered as one of the pioneers around this scene of improvised music that started in some post-industrial countries such as UK, United Kingdom.
Так, понятно пока?
Yeah,
Okay, let's continue without the
sure.
translation.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Well, if something, if you don't, если что-нибудь непонятно спрашивать.
You can do a summary at the end also, the best moments. So this musician called Derek Bailey, he wrote a book. So he was one of the first musicians to claim that he was interested in or developing this practice of improvisation. And around improvisation, there is always this difficulty of engaging with language, to talk about it, to write about it, and to engage theoretically with this practice. So in his book, paradoxically, he wrote a book where he says that improvisation cannot be defined, and improvisation, even though Derek Bailey is part of a scene that historically situates around the 60s in United Kingdom. For him, improvisation is a musical practice that might have always existed. So during this presentation, I will look at these two elements. The fact that it's difficult to define improvisation on this idea that it has always existed, by creating a sort of panorama made of three disruptive, unpredictable, and elusive sound practice that follows the anecdote or the model of an anecdote that took place during a concert by Stockhausen in 1980 in Italy. So I would like to use this anecdote in order to think what can be an improvise or improvisation or an unpredictable sound. This anecdote is about the first presentation of Stockhausen music piece called Sirius that he was presenting in Italy, in Florence, in a church called Santa Croce in 1980. So the anecdote is about the fact that Stockhausen was extremely concerned about the conditions of listening of the audience. So he took care himself to make sure that all the requirements were there in order to listen to the piece in the best conditions. So to give you an example, he was making sure that nobody was smoking, because at that time it was allowed to smoke. And he was also making sure by himself that nobody was coming late, so he really closed the door in order to avoid that anyone would slam the doors during the concert and spoiled the piece. So unfortunately for Stockhausen, there was an unexpected sound that came. And I will read you directly the comments by Stockhausen. So I have this picture, the comments by Stockhausen about this event. So Stockhausen says, we acquired some platforms, and I even found myself asking in person along the rows of 1,000 spectators if they wouldn't mind just these ones not smoking. And then it was up to me to make sure that the doors stayed closed, so that people didn't create a disturbance by banging them once the concert started. Just think, 8 minutes from the start of this first Florentine performance of Sirius, we were overwhelmed by the howling of a great big dog. A dog at the concert, just think, at the beginning of a new work. And he continues explaining this bad experience. So I have this small image that I found on internet from a dog just in front of Santa Croce. So you can, this is invented, I just found it on the internet, but maybe a similar dog was found by Stockhausen. But what I'm more interested in is in using this anecdote of the sound as something that cannot be controlled and crosses the walls. You know, behind here, you can see Santa Croce. The sounds of this dog are crossing the walls, or maybe the door, I don't know, or the windows, spoiling this controlled environment that was created by Stockhausen in order to enjoy as he wanted the sounds that he created. So in a similar way, I will tell you about three sort of sounds that are related to a construction, to a composition, to historical processes, and I will show you how these sounds contrast to these constructions or compositions, which are not necessarily musical, but that I think can be understood as a construction in parallel to this anecdote with Stockhausen. So the first figure that I would like to tell you about is a person who is called who was called Elena Smith. So yes. So her name is Elena Smith. She's born in 1961 and died in 1929. I did this very quickly on the computer before coming, so I couldn't really find the letter. There is an accent here, another accent here, just to let you know. And she's from Geneva in Switzerland. She worked in a department store, and yeah. So I show you this picture that is from Paris. I think you cannot see very well, but I think here it says Bon Marché. Just to illustrate this moment in history where the modern department stores appear. You can see a good descriptions of this in the book by Émile Zola called in English, I guess, The Lady's Paradise, where it describes the life of women working in a department store at that time. So on the one hand, the difficulties of life in this environment as a worker, and on the other hand, all the magnificence, as you can see on this picture, of a sort of environment that is created to sell products, to sell objects. And according to this researcher that has been studying this phenomenon in her book called Dream Worlds, Rosalind Williams talks about these environments as sort of dream worlds, spaces that brings you in a different reality, often connected to a far place. So, for instance, these places were often full of oriental decorations as something that is far. So, create this feeling of distance, of something that cannot be reached, but that paradoxically at the same time, so it creates desire, and in that same place that creates a desire of something that is far, cannot be reached, you can buy anything, an umbrella, a hat. So it's a sort of strategy to create new worlds or distant worlds that creates this desire of going to explore these Asian societies, civilizations from India, from China, and at the same time providing just next to these decorations the new hat or the new umbrella or the new shoes that you can actually buy and get to your house. You can get this exoticism, fantasy. So within this environment of the department stores, there is this person called Elena Smith. Actually, Elena Smith is not a real name. Her real name is Catherine Elise Müller. And Elena Smith is a sort, we could say, a professional name, because she was not an artist. Well, she was not strictly an artist, but she was a medium on the glossarialist who became famous in Geneva at that time because she was able to connect with dead people, with people from other worlds, other planets, other reality, which was, as you probably know at that time, something relatively common, and something that created interest among scientifics. Among scientifics and on the artists. On the picture you can see a representation of Elena Smith in a card, part of a game, of a set of cards that was created by the group of surrealists while they were in Marseille, in the south of France. They were waiting for a boat in order to escape from Nazis. And while they were waiting for this boat, they decided to play. And they didn't really play, but they created the game to play. And one of the cards of this game that they never really could play since the boat arrived and then they left to America. In this game there was this card of Elen Smit. So Elen Smit, before that, she drew interest of, as I told you, scientists. And one of them was a psychologist from Geneva called Théodore de Fournoy, who was studying psychology. And when he heard about the capacities of this person to speak languages that she was not supposed to know, immediately wanted to meet with her, and he started to study the languages, the sounds that this person working, doing her every day in a department store was able to do during these mediumnic sessions. So in this image you can see an attempt that this psychologist did in order to translate or to understand this language. You can see here the letters made by Elen Smit, and here the sort of equivalence by Théodore de Fournoy. And this is a translation of what is supposed to be the language from the planet Mars. So Elen Smit was one day during one of these sessions, a woman came to visit her and to ask if it was possible to communicate with her son who has passed away. And Elen Smit said, yes, of course, we can try. So she did this session where she attempted to communicate with the son, and she found the son. But actually the son had reincarnated in another person who was living in the planet Mars. So yes, so she had to somehow to learn this language. She met people and learned during these sessions. And she learned this language that people like Théodore de Fournoy, who is not so well known, but have in mind that he was a contemporary of Freud. And Freud knew about him. In the library of Freud, you could find the book of Théodore de Fournoy about Elen Smit. So it was there was some sort of connection. And on people like Ferdinand de Saussure, the linguist that you might have heard about him, lived in Geneva at that time and was a colleague of Théodore de Fournoy. Théodore de Fournoy asked Ferdinand de Saussure to have a look to the language of Elen Smit to see if it was possible that Elen Smit spoke Martian or other language such as Sanskrit. So as I mentioned, this psychologist wrote a book about Elen Smit where he was basically explaining that it was probably impossible that someone spoke Martian, or this phenomenon of glossolalias or xenolalias, being able to speak a language that one does not know. So he developed the demonstration, explaining that it was probably the unconscious of this person who was working at making these sounds. But even though he was in this book saying that all these medium things were somehow fake or not scientifically true, some people reading this book and interested in mediumships, they actually thought exactly the opposite. By reading his book, they thought, wow, this person is amazing, she has very strong capacities. And one of these readers from America, she was a very rich person interested in mediums and sort of paranormal activities. She read the book, found out about this medium, and decided to support Elen Smit for the rest of her life. So thanks to these books by the psychologist de Fournoy, kind of demonstrating that these languages are not scientifically real, Ellen Smith eventually stopped working in this department store and dedicated the rest of her life to her medium activities. And she also continued as a painter. You can see here one of her paintings. So she became we could say a painter, an artist, where you can see all these. This is a representation of Mars. So I'm showing this particular image because, as you can see, there is some sort of Asian Oriental atmosphere going on there. So there might be some relations with this reality that she was experiencing in her department store. Now we'll mention a second figure that is more related to my interest and my practice in music, more directly engaging with improvisation in music. So this is something about a musician that I already mentioned, Derek Bailey, the guitar player. Derek Bailey is born in, as you can see, in 1930. Died in 2005. He's from UK, but he died in Spain, in Barcelona. He has been starting his activity as a musician in a place called Sheffield, but then developed more strongly his work in London. Derek Bailey comes from a working class background and decides to become a musician. So for many years he learns music, and he mostly learns music through what he can listen in the radio. So the music in the radio he can listen at that time is a sort of mixture of commercial music that sometimes could be jazz, but it could be sort of folkloric music, swing music, very different kinds of music that comes from this radio. He learns music like that, and he becomes himself a professional musician that consisted of playing in restaurants, hotels, weddings, and a bit later he becomes a professional musician as working in studios for TV, for recording CDs with singers. This is interesting because we are at that moment, so end of the 50s, beginning of the 60s, where the music industry in UK is changing. There is the British developed what we could call a strong national music industry at that moment that can be illustrated by the work of, everybody knows the Beatles. So these young musicians who create their own music and sells millions of recordings. This is a moment for Derek Bailey. So Derek Bailey is here, where suddenly there is also a shift in his experience as a professional musician playing sort of commercial music in restaurants or in weddings, because at that time, as he says in a book, there is a book about his life by Ben Watson, where he explains that the audience in a restaurant until then, they knew most of the music that was played because there was a sort of repertoire that was shared by people thanks to the radio. People had the radio, listened to music, and they kind of all knew the same music. But this music was not always exactly the same. There was like music that was played again and again, and there was several versions of this music. This music could exist in different ways, and that was what interested Derek Bailey. That each time he was playing in this commercial context, he could play in a different way the same pieces. He could explore different aspects of a music piece. But as he comments, as he says, according to him, since the music that was played in the radio was not anymore this sort of common repertoire, but was these new pieces played, for instance, by the Beatles, people in the restaurants would recognize the difference. They will say, this is not exactly what I've heard in the radio, this is your version, or what I want as a customer of music. I want the version exactly as it is played by the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or whoever. And for Bailey, this is a sort of moment that even though he's becoming kind of successful as a commercial musician, he decided that he cannot anymore enjoy finding his interest in this direction. So, well, this is not changing from one day to another. There is a long process, but during this long process, what he's doing is exploring, researching what he will call a non-idiomatic improvisation. So, what is this? I will show you here the quote from a book by Derek Bailey. So, as Bailey says, I have used the terms idiomatic and non-idiomatic to describe the two main forms of improvisation. Idiomatic improvisation, much the most widely used, is mainly concerned with the expression of an idiom, such as jazz, flamenco, or baroque, and takes its identity and motivation from that idiom. Non-idiomatic improvisation has other concerns and is most usually found in so-called free improvisation, and, while it can be highly stylized, is not usually tied to representing an idiomatic identity. That's the definition by Derek Bailey from his book. What I think can be interesting here is to understand that this difference between idioms and non-idioms might be related to the fact that in this context of new changes in the music industry in UK, the music that is made by Derek Bailey, the recordings that are made by Derek Bailey, are somehow sort of the opposite of what could be a music to be sold millions of copies in the world. He's doing something that, against the idea of a commodity, is something that is always different, that there is no really reference to evaluate the quality, that has no really beginning, not really end, that it's has a blurry identity, that is unfamiliar, and that I will show you an excerpt. So this excerpt is a duet by Derek Bailey with the tap dancer called Will Ames. Now I will tell you about the third figure I would like to bring here today. It's a person called Albert Dada, born at the end of the 19th century, and he's from the city of Bordeaux in France, and he used to work in a gas company. So I would like to situate this third figure in the context of not the development, as I said before, of the music industry in UK or the department stores in Europe, but the beginning of the practice of sports as a modern activity and tourism. So I will, in this picture, you can see something I have found. It's a diploma by the Touring Club de France, who was an organization created in 1890 in France. I will translate. This is in French. So it's an association that aims to develop tourism in all its forms. The development of tourism in all its forms in order to conserve develop interest towards picturesque or artistic trips, journeys. So this is a moment where, for instance, there is people who argue to discuss, to defend the idea that it's important to introduce sport in schools. This is something that there is debates around that in France. And there is people who are not only very rich people. It's touching other parts of the categories of the society who might start developing what we all know, myself included. These days I'm going to the Hermitage and I am a sort of tourist in this city. But this activity as a modern practice started at that time, where Albert Dada was living. This is another. So you saw the diploma. This is a sort of diploma or certificate related to the activity of cycling. That shows that this person on this certificate has been able to cycle to different places in a certain amount of time, and since he has been able to do this, he can be considered as a proper cyclist. He has been in these different places, and he has this certificate that says, I am a cyclist. So at the same time that there is this document, this information to develop the idea of tourism, to sport, entertainment, we have Albert Dada, that you can see in this picture here, and a doctor again called Tissier, Albert Tissier, Philippe Tissier, who is in this picture is hypnotizing his patient, Albert Dada. Because Albert Dada, what he does is that some days when he's going to his work or have an appointment with his family or something that he's planning, is something common from his everyday, suddenly he has a sort of absence in his mind, and rather to continue his way on going to his work, he does a sort of he starts walking. He walks, and these walks can be can last one day, can last 1 week, can last several weeks, and can last several months. So in this image, what the doctor is doing is hypnotizing Dada, because all this activity of walking, of going through the territory, is completely forgotten by Dada. So through hypnosis, he's kind of trying to know from Dada where he has been. So it's interesting to, I mean, it's something that is not so common. Like you could say, well, I'm not even sure. But definitely, nowadays, you could in France walk, if you want, for 3 months, and nobody will tell you anything. But it's important to keep in mind that at that time, for a worker like Dada, people had these documents, like sort of passport to move inside the country. So this was made in order to make sure that these people had been to the army. It was a way of controlling people to make sure that they went to the army, and normally it was quite difficult to travel. In spite of that, Albert Dada, during this hypnosis, during these walks, totally mad, this movement, this choreography, this almost, I would say, I don't want to exaggerate, but almost this sort of tap dancing, if we could say. You can see here the map of his expeditions. So, well, I can tell you, Bordeaux is here. Maybe you cannot see very well, I'm sorry for the quality. But doing different journeys, Dada could go to Paris, to Brussels, and even further to Istanbul, and if I'm not wrong, to Moscow. So, in spite of all these things, he did some long journeys. So I will now kind of conclude after these 3 presentations, where you have seen that there is these sounds coming from a particular construction, a context, the development of tourism on sport, the department stores in Europe, and the development of music industry in UK. There is these people like Albert Dada, Derek Bailey, and Ellen Smit that brings a sort of different approach, or some sort of sound that sounds a bit different. I would like to develop this idea, to use this image. So this image is a dictionary, French dictionary, Petit Illustré from 1916. So according to Dadaist Tristan Tzara, this is the dictionary that was used by the members of the movement in order to find the name of the group of the Dadaists. Apparently, they would have Tzara would have put his finger on the dictionary and would have found this word Dada that you cannot see but is here, I think. Sorry for the quality of the picture, it's not very good. So what is Dada according to the Petit Larousse Illustré? Dada is the language of children. In the language of children, as it says in the dictionary, it means horse. And according to the same dictionary, Dada is also an onomatopoeia, is a sound. So there is 2 different understandings. What interests me here is how Dadaist Tristan Tzara take in the dictionary a word that is part of this construction of language, this vocabulary, this repertoire of words that is available to use in order to communicate. Use this word that is already a bit strange, since it belongs to the language of children. We don't know exactly what is the language of children, but the dictionary says that. It takes out this word and it creates a movement that engage with different things, and is not strictly a movement that creates definition, but kind of moves away of a certain logic and a certain idea of nonsense. However, this word that has been taken out by Dadaist and Tristan Tzara out of the dictionary, if you look at the dictionary nowadays, not this one, but your dictionary at home, you will find Dada, language of children, that means horse, if it's if you have this French dictionary. On the bit below, you will find Dadaism. So this word that has been taken out now has come back to the dictionary and as being somehow accepted by the dictionary. I'm interested in this, and I will finish now, because it's after what I've presented to you, these people like Albert Dada or Derek Bailey, that seems to play something, some sounds, or making some movements, gestures that are escaping from a certain reality. I would like to say that this movement of going somewhere else cannot really be understood without these origins. And that sounds, the sound that Stockhausen could hear outside of the church, somehow this sound was already present inside of the church. And the sounds of Derek Bailey are not simply about escaping from the Beatles, but there is something that is connected to the music industry at that time. So rather than going out, simply going out, going somewhere else, I think it's interesting to look at these things in terms of being able of moving, going out, but also looking at these things take place inside. So not only outside of the church, this dog that passed in front of Santa Croce in Florence, but also what is already embedded in the music or in the dictionary or in the department store or in the music industry or in the industry of tourism. It's already somehow there. And to illustrate that, I will just show you this last picture where you can see the location of Sirius, the piece of Stockhausen. That's as you probably or some of you already knew, it's a star that's part of the constellation called Canis Major. That's it. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Я думаю, что вопросов довольно много может быть, но если кто-то хочет спросить сразу, то давайте, потому что иначе я давайте.
Okay, one question.
Yes.
So, as I remember, you had some sort of sound installation based on Elon Smith's works. Could you talk a bit about that, maybe?
Well, you remember not very well because I didn't have an installation. I had a performance.
Performance?
Yes.
Performance. Yeah, my memory is a bit fuzzy.
Yes. Yeah. I had a performance with an artist who is called Charlotte Lowe. We have videos on the internet, and we were performing sort of recreating invented languages. Where this was kind of long time ago, one year ago more or less, and I think at that time we were working more on this idea of creating a language that did not exist. So in order to achieve this, I was interested in developing a strategy as a musician, as an improviser, to get or to enter or to create environments that were unfamiliar with my musical instrument. And so the strategy consisted of working with someone who was not a musician. She's a visual artist, and during this performance she was creating a sculpture. She was making a sort of sculpture. We could maybe just say a construction. this construction was constantly falling because she did not have the proper tools, and it was a very risky construction. And I was looking at this as a way of, rather than simply collaborating with someone who works with visuals, I was looking at this as a way of making sounds. And for me it was very inspiring or refreshing to play with someone who makes sounds, but clearly not always intentionally, on sounds that are not obviously created in order to make music. So it was a strategy in order to improvise. And you can find videos on the internet were not videos of the performance, but videos from the performance. Yeah. Around this Elena Smith glossolarias, invented languages, there is an event on Saturday, and there will be a small talk presenting Elena Smith on the glossolarias, but mostly it will be very different from today, because it will be more like a performance, like a workshop performance. So we will somehow experience these glossolalic adventures of Elena Smith by making sounds on the developing strange practice of listening. So if you are interested, I think there is something on the well, you can ask me.
Why did you take Helen Smith but not Hugo Ball, Mathusian, futurists? Because it was like a big movement of such glossolalic poetry.
Yeah, totally.
Why did you choose him?
Well, I started. Sometimes it's difficult to remember exactly the moment where you I probably thought that it was. I mean, I was interested in practices that were not too far in history, because you can find glossolalia in the 3rd century after Christ. There is this person called Montanus, who was, it's a religious phenomena, so it really starts long time ago. So I was interested in something not too far, but I was also interested in something not strictly artistic, something that was more in the border, something that was that could be considered as by some people as more scientific phenomenon, by others maybe as religious, spiritual phenomenon. And as I show you with the surrealist André Breton, there is also a connection with an art practice. So that's a bit why I was interested, because she's in different spaces, and because she's not so well known than Hugo Ball. Yeah, but definitely Hugo Ball is. I also have been interested in his glossolaric performances.
Насколько всем присутствующим понятно, потому что я не очень понял, как он связывает, я хочу спросить про это. Насколько было ясно, что как связаны эти три фигуры?
Почему такое было?
Ну да, потому что вопрос, почему именно Элен. So, just one more question, just to explicate your point. If I understand you correctly, you compare Helen Smith's some spiritual performances, Derek Bailey's performance, purely musical, artistic, and some crazy trajectories of this guy who's called Dada.
Yeah.
Because what Helen Smith does in her mediomatic performance is the same as Derek Bailey tries to make in his musical performance, and the same as what this guy Dada is making geographically on the map. That's your point. I'm trying.
Well,
to
there is
raise-
similitudes. It would be a bit exaggerated to say that it's exactly the same. But I would like to find or to create or to recreate or maybe to invent a genealogy of improvisation that will not just be.
Of free improvisation.
Yeah.
Non-idiomatic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So recreating these paths that are clearly not obvious,
Mhm.
that are clearly, maybe it's my perception, my way of looking at these patterns. But I think that within this history of modernity, also in this area of the 60s, there is still possible to create links and beyond the musical boundaries, and that this can hopefully bring some tools in order to reconsider practice of improvisation nowadays, to have some perspective in the musical practice. That I didn't talk so much, but that's also my aim.
Yeah, I see. In general, the project is clear, but the links are the essential. I mean that that's the main point. That should be the main point of such a research, because so the free or non-idiomatic improvisation is free from something Derek Bailey calls idioms. So just some existing patterns in musical genres and in musical compositions and so on. And the speech or the language or parole or langage of Elon Smit is free from what? From the similitudes of people's human languages. So what is...
Yeah, that's a bit why I started to think that maybe I could try these connections. Because in the language of, according to, to different studies, the Martian of Ellen Smith is made of languages that already exist, such as French.
Yeah, it's true. Yes.
So it's a Martian with French accent, we could say. So it's made from...
Moreover, all this myth of Helen Smith is made from the popular interplanetary myth of that time, because there were a lot of spiritists like
Yeah, totally. I mean, there was books, there was...
So she's not completely free from the cultural background, and Derek Bailey states that the so-called free improvisation is free from what? From the existing genres, or from... You see this parallel between Derek Bailey and Helen Smith, so yes, it's interesting, but we should explicate this connection by showing in which points this connection is made.
Yeah, I could insist on that aspect. That's not really what. Yeah, I could insist on this. I could foreground the fact that Ellen Smith Martian is, there is connections with existing languages, and that Derek Bailey non-idiomatic improvisation could be very easily connected to the music of Weber, for instance.
To the music?
Weber.
Okay.
Yes, for instance. So that, showing that Derek Bailey was extremely interested in this composer, that he has been doing transcriptions. But I could also say that Derek Bailey, he had this culture of the radio, and we could find some connections with the music he was doing before. I think this historian called Michel de Certeau, what he says about Ellen Smith, Martian, is that the significant important point is not if it's true or not. Nobody really, maybe people don't care about this, but it's not necessarily so important. But Michel de Certeau is interested in the movement. Why making this movement from French to Martian. You know, it's not knowing if Martian is real or what, but how does it work to go there? Why to go there? And I thought that maybe I was personally also interested in knowing why Derek Bailey go to this non-idiomatic improvisation when you have around you all this music going on that is pretty different. So it's more this movement of Michel de Certeau called it exiting language. For Derek Bailey could be exiting sort of commercial music. So that's more this path that I would like to research more, definitely.
So to sum up your main point, we can say that to understand what is the non-idiomatic improvisation, just look at what Elin Smit or this guy Dada made in their everyday lives, and that would be a good parallel to what Derek Bailey wanted to achieve. So to escape in some crazy or mad state all the existing modes of living, of communicating, of working, it is summing up good for your presentation. So I try to elucidate more. So is your interest to give an image of non-idiomatic or improvisation, or inverse, to understand more deeply what Elin Smit or this guy Dada made in their life? So is your interest purely musical, or is it interest in two directions? So to understand musical phenomenon and to understand, I don't know, spiritual and crazy states of mind. So
probably you want to show that improvisation, it is not specific thing for musicians. So this is kind of historic epistemic drive from all people, from different people, how they behave, how they try to find some extra sound.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, it's a bit what you are saying, but also in relation to what you said about building an image. I think maybe by bringing in, I would like to bring different contributors in order to build this image, and not only people from music or from improvised music. I would like also to build an image that, well, you know, that could be a bit plastic. You know, that could be, if there is several people contributing to build this image, maybe it's a good way to avoid fixing or rigidifying or cosifying the musical practice.
Okay. And by using these examples, you're trying to compose some music of your own. I mean, what we'll hear on Saturday here is somehow connected to your method.
What can I tell you? There is not a direct jump from one to the other. There are other things that happen in between. But it's a possibility, yeah, definitely.
Okay, thanks.
Будут еще вопросы, но вот я для себя немного прояснил, хотя мне кажется, докторская диссертация пока что еще не защищена, и вот, мне кажется, придется столкнуться с некоторыми проблемами. Мы посмотрим. Выступающим, я имею в виду. Да, вопрос. Пожалуйста, если
можно я на русском?
Да, Вадим, переведете.
Потому что я не хочу никому учиться на английском. Ну, как раз меня не совсем вызвал вопрос основания сопоставления этих кейсов. Вот, ну, правда, для меня было очевидно, что это все является примерами импровизации. Но я это связала с тем, какое было выступление и анонс, что, ну, по всей видимости, все эти практики, как я сначала это поняла, связаны с, ну, вот этой идеей бессмыслицы, что как бы цепь означающих отвлекается от семантики, ну, в совсем широком смысле. Ну, как бы происходит вот это, ну, то, что Делес называет детериоризацией. Вот. И в связи с этим тогда возникает вопрос, ну, если мы это мыслим все-таки как практику языка, что импровизация, ну, что это именно потому называется импровизацией, что размыкаются как бы вот эти конститутивные границы изначальной практики, типа туризма, там, музыки, языка. И именно из-за вот этой бессмыслицы она как бы освобождается, то, ну, тогда кажется, ну, если мы это называем импровизацией, то тогда кажется естественный вопрос. Выходит, что импровизация, она всегда связана с тем, что, ну, что мы отличаем импровизацию от неимпровизации по принципу того, что одна из этих практик заведомо бессмысленна. Вот, собственно, вопрос.
Вам нужно совместно с пейпер писать с ней, мне кажется, вы лучше выразили. Ну да, это, конечно, все про детериторизацию, но, по-моему, у него не звучало просто слово бессмыслица. Это вы сейчас. То есть...
Мне кажется, даже этот пример с дадаизмом, ну, кажется, не случайно.
Ну, дадаизм, да, Вадим. Может,
да, так.
Спасибо.
Давайте по кусочкам, потому что ничего вы начали. То есть, речь идет о том, что если вот сейчас. То есть я так понимаю, что ваш вопрос о том, что если вот эти практики основаны на размыкании границ языка, выход в поле, как, скажем так, бессмысленного.
Тут три пункта. Первое, что это очевидно связано с размыканием границ. Второй пункт, что, по всей видимости, оно происходит через этот выход в бессмыслицу, но понято более широко, чем просто в языке, в смысле, что это, ну, она, как бы, эта практика отрывается от своей прагматики и осмысленности. Вот. И тогда, если мы это все называем импровизацией, то получается, что импровизация заведомо практика, лишенная, ну, вот этой изначальной прагматики и смысла. Вопрос.
So the question was, so these three practices that you talked about, they all, what they have in common is that they go out of some language system, some semantic system, and into something that we can call well, not exactly senseless, but something that lacks the pragmatics. And if this is what constitutes improvisation, so are you saying? Oh, I'm sorry. So you're saying that what is characteristic of improvisation is that lack of some sort of pragmatics.
What do you mean by pragmatics? By
so by having a meaning, yeah, having some purpose, maybe some, well,
nonsense.
Yeah, go into nonsense. Into some.
I would like to. Well, I don't really necessarily want to. Do you understand? Yeah.
Yes.
I don't want to say that I'm bringing here the definition of what improvisation is now. You know, and this definition of improvisation as a nonsense would be a bit disappointing, I would say, if we consider that, for instance, these make immediate connection with movements from the beginning of the 20th century, such as Dadaism. So I think there is a nonsense in the moment of Derek Bailey. If this nonsense is connected to the context that is very specific and very singular. But nowadays I would not suggest a broad definition of improvisation as a nonsense. That would be a nonsense.
But
So
is
what-
Dada an example of nonsense? What is Dada in your presentation and for you personally?
Dada is related to, well, it's not about Dada, this presentation. There is a sort of game with the names of this man who was working on the name of this movement. But I was more interested in this place of the dictionary, where you can find a definition, a clear definition, but you can also move away. So again, I think there is this path from a clear place where you have a definition, you know what are the limits, and you can go somewhere else. So Dada in this context is somewhere else.
Do you know the term by Deleuze, déterritorialisation?
Yes, I mean, I'm not a Deleuze expert, but
Describes very well so this gesture of escaping. This was suggested by you.
Yes, I have some friends who made similar comments about Deleuze. But personally, I think maybe for the next time I will talk about Deleuze, but I think not now.
But I'm not sure that...
Я тоже не очень понимаю. Но что же, вот так вот.
I'm not sure that this is deterritorialization because it means including abstraction. DTR means abstraction. So we extract an abstraction, but in this situation we extract performative. So what do they do? The last Dada guy walks without memory, so this is just performance. Elon Smith also did something without understanding. So it means that we are rejecting abstraction to performative. Yes, and you mean...
Можете по-русски пытаемся.
Да я и пару вообще слов забыл. Improvisation means less schematic consciousness, and в общем, давайте по-русски попробую. Значит, главная идея, насколько я поняла, это вот отрыв от как бы структуры и смысла, который является идиомой, да, и, соответственно, что у нас получается? У нас получается некоторое количество перформативных практик, которые как бы вот никак не связаны, но предположительно, что их можно связать вот какое-то такое импровизационное направление.
Вы будете третьим соавтором этой дискуссии, мне кажется. Попробуйте перевести.
Okay, the comment was more of a comment than a question. So if in these three cases we have the comment was that it was not strictly deterritorialization in the sense that in the Deleuzean deterritorialization it's some abstraction that gets out of the context, but in these cases we are dealing with the performative practice, and it's basically the opposite of abstraction. Yes, so in case of Ellen Smit, for example, she lacked probably the understanding of what she was doing culturally, in cultural sense. So it was more of an action than abstraction, and in this sense, so with this kind of performative practices that go out of their context, they constitute this, a more generalized, they constitute improvisation in a more generalized sense.
Is at the end they constitute improvisation?
Improvisation in a more generalized sense.
Well, I don't know about the performance. I think that there is a code that can be performed. You can perform an action. I mean, I don't want to make it too open, but I think in the case of Ellen Smit or Derek Bailey, there is something about these codes that are, I don't know, they are, like there is a certain codes about music, and these codes are sort of, some musicians are moving away from these chords. They are not necessarily playing with these chords in order to make something else, but it seems that they are taking some distance from these chords in order to create a place where I think there is a sort of utopia of absence of chords, a music without idiom is almost this utopia of a transparent language or music that does not need a local code because it's transparent. Well, this is a sort of utopia. I'm not so familiar with Deleuze. What I remember about this term that's so difficult to pronounce is that I think he gives the example of these children on a bed. And these children playing in this bed are not anymore in a bed, they are in a forest or somewhere else. And even though a forest is quite, can be very dark or mysterious, it's still a place, I think. So they are going from one place to another place. Whilst in the case of Derek Bailey, he's going to a sort of utopian place that has no really here and now. So if I was more interested in Deleuze, it would be about this idea of well, the improvisation would be more about knowing how to go there. Or maybe it talks also about this devenir. So maybe I would be interested to know more about the process of going from one place to another place. How does it work, this transformation? That would be something that I could be interested in relation to Deleuze. Not only Deleuze, but yeah.
By the way, you know that Stockhausen said that he was born in Sirius, so...
yeah, I read a bit about that. Yes. In this book, I think he mentions, yes.
So he's
yes.
like, just like Helen Smith.
Yeah, I thought, I'm curious about this. I don't know so much about Stockhausen, but there could be some connection between Stockhausen and Ellen Smit, and maybe some rap. Was also
Devenir chien.
Yeah.
Chez Deleuze, à propos.
Yeah, okay.
Becoming
Yeah.
dog. So, будут еще вопросы? Ну вот так как-то сегодня русскому слушателю казалось гораздо более интересным, чем, мне кажется, выступающему. Да? На этом заканчиваем. Если вопросов нет, то на этом все. И 24 апреля приходите на лекцию Артема Рондарева, которую мы